All right. Well, hopefully everybody's starting to filter in. Excited to share some stories today, get this thing kicked off. Um, I would tell a bad dad joke, but how dare I? I don't want to start off that corny. Andy, you got one?
No, not offhand. I
All right.
gotta be in the moment. Gotta be in the moment.
That's right. All right. Well, I'm going to assume that everybody here that wants to look at me and hear me talk is going to come in now, and everybody who wants to hear you guys talk will come in as I'm scrolling through. So, I'm gonna kick off. Basically, this is our general membership meeting. Just welcome everybody here. Um, this is going to be a pretty exciting event today. We got some great panelists here to talk with us. Jumping into this, I just want to talk to you about the agenda. Um, basically, I'm going to give you the opening remarks, for me, and give our task force updates, let you know what we've been up to. And then our topic today that we're going to talk about is innovate to survive, how new product ideas are born. I'll be your moderator. I work for SpeedTech Performance as a general manager. We've got Carl Fredrickson from Speedway Illustrated, Gavin Knapp from SEMA, Pat Musey from Pat Musey Racing Engines, and Andy Ricketts from Livernois Motorsports and Engineering. So a really great panel today. Should be some fantastic discussions. You've got a pretty good breadth there of people that have been in the industry for several years and should have a lot of ideas to share from different aspects of the industry. Um, Moving on from the agenda, want to talk to you about our council leadership. Just to introduce and thank these people for their volunteer work. Myself, I'm the chair of the MPMC. Brian Bolander is our chair-elect, and he's from Old World Industries. We also have on our select committee, which is the group that really does all the heavy lifting. On that committee, Mark Campbell, Nolan Jamora, Brian LeBaron, Ian Lynn, Johnny McDevitt, Scott McLaughlin, Karen Orlandi, Adrian Peters, Mike Sanders, and Bill Bader is our Summit or SEMA board liaison from Summit Motorsports Park. Also, the glue that keeps us together and herds the cats the most is our council director, Marcy Yanis from SEMA. So jumping from there, I just want to give you a little quick intro to what upcoming events we have. We do have another webinar for product marketing, data that moves parts. That's on June 24th, so look for that invite. Sign up if you'd like to. We also have our PRI membership appreciation and awards banquet, or not banquet, the reception at the PRI show on December 12th. And then shortly after that, we'll have the media trade conference, which will be in Anaheim again. So back to California. I'm going to run through a little bit more information, kind of give our membership report moving forward here, but I would like to take a minute and ask you guys to fill out a poll for us while I'm rambling. Basically, it just gives us a little bit of information about you guys and where you're at in the industry, who's paying attention here, who our audience is. Having a little bit more detail and maybe some direction from you will help us do a better job with webinars and what we do for the select committee, for our events. So please take a moment while I'm talking here. Just you'll see that poll pop up and go ahead and answer those questions. Now I'm going to jump into our membership report, kind of give you the status of what the MPMC is doing. Current companies, we have 168. We had 8 new companies join since the last webinar. That's Applied Speed, Crestmold Technology, Gearhead Fab Works, Gorman Performance Engineering, Integral Truck, oh man, I don't know how you say that. Katie Fincham, that's how you say it now. TRZ Motorsports, Turntide Technologies. Anyway, those are our new companies, and we welcome you guys. Even though I butchered your name, I'm sorry for that. We still love you guys. Appreciate you coming in and joining us. If you're already a member of the MPMC or your company is a member of the MPMC, do know that all of your employees can be members of MPMC with your company. So update your contact information. MPMC is a great council to be a part of. And if your company's in You already know that, but it's a fantastic way to network, and we can do a better job serving you and giving you those opportunities to network by having your contact information updated. If you'd like to do that, just email member@sema.org to request additions to your roster and to update it. You know, if somebody's moved on or you got new people in that you want to have, you know, up on the front there to make sure that they're in the loop, please do that. If you need any help too, you can contact Marcy at SEMA.org. And she's the only Marcy at SEMA ever. So that's why she's got her own specific email. Anyway, contact either one of those and we'll get you helped out and get you updated. Let's see, next, talking about communications that we've been doing. We do offer member spotlights and videos. So if you'd like for us, you know, to share some information about your company and any products that you guys may have that you want to, you know, get on the edge of the mountain and scream, let us do that. We'll handle that. Just reach out. You can do that at our website, sema.org/MPMC. Also look for emails. We'll do member updates about 5 times a year. So every couple months, you should see an update from us in an email. We also release information through SEMA news articles. So, and if you're not, you know, not already getting the SEMA News magazine emailed to you, I recommend it. It's very, very on point, keeps you up to breath or up to date on what's going on in the industry. You can get to that. You can find that on SEMA.org as well. And then also, you know, do us a favor and follow us on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn. We're in, you know, both places. So it just kind of, that's our way of, you know, sharing what information as it comes. That's all for the council update. I'm going to quit rambling now and we'll get into the nitty gritty of the webinar today. I do want to introduce our panelists so that you can know who each one is. We've got Carl Fredrickson from Speedway Illustrated, Pat Musey from Pat Musey Racing, Gavin Knapp from SEMA, and Andy Ricketts from Livermore Motorsports and Engineering. I'd like to introduce you guys individually. I'll give you a minute to talk about who you are and kind of some of your history and experience of the industry. So, Carl, would you take the lead on that one? Just
Sure.
introduce you.
Sure. Thanks, John. So in 1981, a family friend took me to an auto race and I fell in love with the deal. I got my first job in motorsports in 1990, working at the race engine shop owned by Joe Moriarty, an MPMC Hall of Famer. He hired me on January 1, 1990. I worked there for a couple of years until I asked another MPMC Hall of Famer, Dick Bergman, for a job writing technical stories for dumb people like me. He took me on as a freelancer, hired me in 1992, hired me full time in January of 94, and that's the job I've had since. And proud and privileged. I think my first MPMC was right around 20 years ago, maybe 23 years ago, something like that. But it's fascinating, it's wonderful, and my career would be absolutely incomplete without MPMC. So thank you for that.
And that's awesome, Carl. Appreciate that. So Carl definitely knows where all the bodies are buried. So everybody be on your toes here. You know? Andy, why don't we let you do an intro too, man?
Sure. Andy Ricketts, Livermore Motorsports and Engineering. Been in the industry about 25 years, almost 20 of it has been here. Been in a car since I can remember. Some of my earliest memories are poking around a car, wanting to know what things are, and being about age 7 and already knowing more about cars than my dad and having to branch out, right? So it turned into a career, you know, and it's one that's been great. Done a lot of MPMCs. We've been an MPMC member for, gosh, at least a decade, probably longer, right, at this point. It's been real fun, right? You know, we get to do a lot of stuff. Turn my, you know, interest and hobby into a career, like probably most of y'all on here, right? If you didn't, why are you here? You know, you got to love this stuff to do it. So, you know, but happy to be here, happy to participate.
Pat, will you want to introduce yourself in case anybody doesn't know?
I'm Pat Musey. I run Pat Musey Racing Engines now, but started in 1970 as Pat's Speed Shop. Was out of high school, but I was street racing in '68. That was my start. Always loved cars and opened a speed shop. I raced a lot. I raced pro stock. I was raced pro mod. I was fortunate enough to win in a lot of different categories. So it gave me a lot of insight into my engine building, being on the racetrack, building the engines, racing. I think it was a great help to my company. And then we kind of formed a little partnership with Edelbrock about 20 years, but all told, I've been around for over 50 years. So it's been a while.
Yeah, man, that is awesome to hear, man. And that's great feedback too for anybody that's just jumping in, is where do you find that innovation? Is racetrack has a lot to do with it.
Yes, it does. I mean, you just can't give that up if you want to stay current. Me and my wife still go. Lizzie's car is still campaigning in PDRA, and we
Yeah,
committed to go the whole season, help Blake Denton with that car. And it's just a good deal.
that's awesome. Well, Gavin, we definitely saved the best for last, right?
Well, you saved something for last. So I am Gavin Knapp. I am the head of market research for SEMA and PRI. So as such, I consider myself kind of an information guy for the industry. So if you see reports or things and articles coming out that says, specialty auto parts is a $52 billion market last year, those are the things that come from me. So anyone out there who's a SEMA member, PRI members, they can come to me in my department for reports, data, and other information. And we're also always just happy to chat and help you out and point you in the right direction. So if you're looking for information, happy to talk to you.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know that you probably had helped a ton of companies in SEMA and PRI, just, give them a little insight, just to shine a light on some data that really, paints a picture for where the industry is and where it's going.
That's the hope.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm gonna invite everybody that's come to attend today. Please use the chat. You'll see, down at the bottom there, you can open the chat. And if you have questions for these guys, I'll use that today and feed them in as they come. I'm gonna start one question off here, kind of roll with what Pat, you started to talk about there, is the innovation that you found at the racetrack. Can you give us a specific example of, an experience that a racing experience that directly inspired an innovative product idea?
I was thinking about it. Something to mention. We started fuel injection and nitrous tuning and brought it to the forefront of Pro Mod. Actually, I won an entry event with it. That's when everybody changed after that race. But we did it in 2000, 99, 2000. I was offered a deal from EFI Tech in Grand Western, and we've run it ever since. So I was way ahead of the curve, fuel injection wise. So, and that's how it got innovated. I really, I think that was a major deal you can't run a nitrous Pro Mod engine on carburetors. It ain't happening. Trust me. So that was a big deal for us. That was a big innovation, but that came from the racetrack, came from, connections in the industry. They came to me, would you like to try it? And I'm the kind of guy who'll about try anything. So especially if I can get an edge on the competition. So that was a big one, an innovative deal. But, everybody's got it now. But if you look at all the nitrous Pro Mod engines, just look at the basic layout. It's ours. I mean, I ain't an ego guy. I'm just telling you, with throttle bodies, where the injectors are, they just carry on with it, which I'm glad for the industry because it makes competition. We keep working on our stuff, and what it's led to is some of this street stuff that we're doing with Edelbrock, our 555 grade engine. The drivability, I mean, that's about as hard as running nitrous and fuel injection. So we've had to learn our way around, that it drives like your Suburban or your Camaro or whatever you have, in these cars. So That's
Right.
something we're working on. There's a lot more stuff. If they want to know about the Edelbrock Race Center, I could talk about, but we'll give them a chance to ask.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. That's really kind of an incredible story that, that kind of pioneered the way that the nitrous system is laid out is something that you got your hands on first. And it's pretty much, industry standard now. You see it everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just by being there and being a racer and like you say, taking the bull by the horns and saying, give it to me. I'm ready. I want to be the first guy to do it. It looks like an advantage.
It was kind of a little funny backstory. Ricky Smith is a longtime customer. He's won 3 or 4 Pro Mod championships in NHA. And we went to Vegas with it when I decided to run Pro Mod. And he goes, you'd have a pretty fast hot rod if you put carburetors on it. I said, well, we'll see what happens. After I won Norwalk in 2010, I get a phone call. All right, what do I need to do? We converted it. And he's never looked back. He would never look back. I mean, once you make the
Right.
switch, you're kind of committed. And, but that's kind of how things go, just funny stories like that.
Man, that's awesome. Let me switch it up a little bit. I'm going to kick over to you, Carl. Question I've got here is how can collaboration between media relations and market research teams help manufacturers better anticipate consumer demand in motorsports? And Gavin, you may get to, weigh in on this one too.
Well, listening to Pat, I find it remarkable because I'm on the other side of the coin, right? And I get press releases about small block Chevrolets over 70 years since it was created with new products that come out in 2025. And equally, I'll go to my local speedway and I'll see someone who has an innovation on a hobby stock, a guy who's been racing for a couple of years and it just came to him. And I find that the common thread among racers at all levels here is that they are inspired to innovate on their own. And it's fascinating from the smallest individual race team to the biggest company in motorsports. That's a common thread throughout, and I love it and I admire it. For us, it's a matter of being there. Our editorial team talks every week, and we talk about the races we've been to, what a car count's like, what does a fan grandstand look like, what are racers talking about. We put all those things together. So we're doing market research ourselves. And so maybe SEMA and MPMC represent sort of the wide end of the funnel. We can participate in that as well from our magazine and our participatory standpoint, because at the end of the day, what's most important, we love to talk with legendary racers and celebrate them and their accomplishments. But really, all of our collective efforts have to be, in my category, the kid who just ran his first hobby stock race in Kansas. I don't know his name, but he's the most important guy holding my magazine. And I'm sure it's the same thing for somebody who's just walked into a car show for the first time. Maybe he took a train there, but when he finds a welcoming face, that grows this industry. And that's the one thing we have all together.
Right.
Very true.
Gavin, what about you? How does the relationship to market research, how does that help manufacturers anticipate the consumer demand?
Yeah, and there's
examples?
a lot of times you'll think about market research or data as more downstream in the process. Sometimes we think about that, oh wow moment, right? You got an idea. But there's also opportunities to be intentional about coming up with new ideas, whether that's, extensions of what you've already done or complementary products, whether it's looking for customer needs that you can fulfill, or looking where the biggest opportunity areas or the new opportunity areas, and all of that stuff that you can find through data, either that you collect or that you find elsewhere, right? You can come to the SEMA website, to the research page, and we have a variety of reports that talk about how big the market is. It gives you insights into what people in the industry are thinking, what consumers are thinking. So that's all there to help spark those ideas. On the PRI side, if you're a PRI business member, you can log into your portal, and we have a PRI racing state of the market in there. And those are sort of formal things, right? But then there's also a lot of informal things that I think companies forget about. Every time you talk to a customer or a potential customer, you have the chance to gather some data, right? And I think what people forget to do is be intentional about it, which is gather that data up, remember it, right? If somebody calls into your customer service line and says, do you make this product, or do you make a product for this application, right? That's helping you to figure out where your next product might be, right? What it might be. If you're talking tech support, obviously most companies are trying to remember what's wrong with their product, right? Or where the issues are. But what about the compatibility issues? Are you intentional about thinking about those? What are those complementary products that you might be able to move into? Or what other issues is that customer having, right? Where are their needs? While you have them, those are things that you can collect. But you also need to be, again, intentional, put that somewhere, collect it together, come back and review it when you're thinking about what's next for your company.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting too, Gavin, is just the intent there, of, I guess it's always the common thing with passion is, sometimes you do get passionate about what you want to say next, and rather than listen and kind of know when you're talking to a potential customer is, hey, there's value there if you listen and really are diligent about keeping the information and reviewing. So that kind of gives me a segue to another question here. Andy, I want to step in with you, and then Pat,
Sure.
I know this will be right up your alley too. Andy, I know you guys have done, several parts that you've done where you work with other manufacturers to make a Livernois, design and branded part. So do you have any like practical steps or like best practices to effectively collaborate with manufacturers to bring an idea from concept to reality?
Yeah, definitely some, I guess you could say, bullet points and things that we always do when we're approaching that, right? Is, you communicate, right? Because a lot of times these other manufacturers make something similar, and you want to convey what you're trying to achieve, right? Not just the same thing with a different logo, but a functional change, right? What the goal is, what your want, and the reason that drives it. That way they can better understand it and know what you're trying to do and where that experience comes into play. So, they may, let's say it's a cold air manufacturer, right? We're going to tell them what we want to see different, why there's a benefit there, and what we've encountered in the installation side, calibration side, and those types of items that really can make something that's good better, and make it more versatile or better power, whatever that may be. And just try to have that relationship, communicate, talk about it and talk about those benefits that you want to see and why the changes should happen.
Right. Yeah,
You know,
that's what we see even in the chassis. My history was with Hypertech and calibrations, and now I work for Speedtech Performance, and we make chassis. But the details of communication and intent, and being diligent about the information and reviewing it, it applied from calibration side. It also applies in the manufacturing side that I see too. And
right.
communication is key. Whenever you're working, whether it's people in your business or people outside your business, when another company, a collaboration, communication, that's what I see as well. So Pat, I know you were talking about your engines, and working the details of the drivability. I know, Andy and myself have had that experience as well. It's like wide open's the easy part, getting the
Yeah.
drivability, you know, maybe share some of your experience there of, what you've seen is like kind of conveying that, intent of what you did for your engines that you're releasing now.
Well, we pushed that 555, which is a plug and play big block. I'm a big block guy. You bring your small block in here, you break your mother's motor in here, or borrowed it from her car, or whatever with it. So, I was making a joke, but there are in a lot of big block plug and play deals, but we had a learning curve. Get them in the cars. There's a car that's going to go off at me comes in May, but it's a driver. You can get in it, hop in it, hit the key. I mean, a big block, you got to sit there pumping and firing. This thing hit the key, drive it off, you're gone. But it was a learning curve, with I didn't have to sell it to Edelbrock. I mean, they were all for it. They really, Vic, back in the day, said, he used to call me kid, imagine. So he'd say, kid, what can we build for the street that you can run on pump gas? And we built the first motor for his red Chevelle, which is a pretty known car. We learned a lot, through the years, but we got it. I think it's perfect. I mean, I don't know that we can make it much better. It learns your driving.
Oh,
Oh, looks like you may have, lost connection there. We'll see if he gets back, if we can rejoin the story here. I'm sure, Pat's feelings there too are the same as what we're saying, is like, hey, you're gonna hear, oh, Pat, are you back?
Yeah, I'm back. I don't know what happened.
Man, somebody hit the pause button on your story. You must have been telling something bad. They put the filter on you.
I don't think so, but okay.
So I cut out there. I think you were talking about the original engine that you worked with Vic on. That's about where it cut out on.
Okay, so he came to me, wanted to know what we could do for the street. I'm a racer, but wanted to do a pump gas big block that somebody could buy, plug and play. We did one for that red Chevelle he had that he liked, was a 67. And that's how the whole deal started. It's funny how things started. The cylinder head program, I went out there to help them with their nitrous deal. We'll kind of fade off for a second. We're in Rick Roberts, who's the cylinder head engineer. We're in his office. So Vic takes us to the foundry. My eyes are like this big when I got to the foundry. So we got back. I said, why aren't you guys doing race heads? And what is the deal? Well, we don't know what to make. Well, I'll tell you what to make. And that's kind of how the cylinder program happened, the race center, which is here, and all the cylinder heads. So a lot of it just happens. I lost you again.
No, we're still here.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So my deals are kind of funny. I've been fortunate, not had to sell myself. They kind of come to me for an idea, and we put it together and we work on it. They always don't work, but 90% of the time we kind of hit it and get it fixed and solve problems and make it work.
Right. So it sounds like your relationships, kind of the communications there because of your relationships, and I'm sure your dedication to making the products right, warrants the dedication to come back as well. And of course, the money that we're looking to make on these things is, hey, if we're going to do it, let's go do it right so that we can both put our names on it and be happy. So, I'm going to jump over here. Kind of this is probably a broad panel discussion here for pretty much everybody here, but, looking ahead, what emerging trends and technologies in motorsports, should we be paying attention to right now? What are you guys thinking? Don't all speak at once.
Well, I'm going to jump in on this just because you talk about emerging technologies, right? That's sort of one of our biggest things, right? Newest of the new is what Livernois tends to hang their hat on, right? So that meant like embracing the Coyote in 2010 before they were really out, embracing Gen 3 Hemi before, a lot of people, embracing LT and direct injection. And we're starting to see more and more of that go from just what's in your street car to now race cars are purposely trying to get built and retain direct injection because of the power, capability there, and start taking those applications from late model and starting to integrate them into traditional based engines as well. I mean, if you rewind time, right, beehive valve springs was like this big concept that nobody had thought of until all of a sudden the LS came with it from the factory. So the OEMs can still teach us some stuff, and then we can teach the OEMs some stuff as well about how to do it. But I think some of the biggest emerging thing is the real embrace of late model. I mean, you see pro mod stuff being built with coyotes, right? Like that was something that nobody would ever think to do. And LSs are not just the street rod swap anymore, you know, or have been for a while, I should say. And you see Hellcat swap stuff and they turn into 7-second, 6-second race cars, you know, so it's definitely something that those emerging technologies from the OEMs and the aftermarket improvement of those OEM things translate into the race industry as well.
Carl, what do you think? I saw you raise your hand there for a second.
Yeah, thank you. I've I've been participating and collaborating with a group called Mod Pro AI, and they're using artificial intelligence to develop programs where if you have, let's say, even a budget in mind, and say I want to get, I have $500 to spend, it will give you a good idea of what you're going to get. It'll also give you an idea of what you're going to need to do. So let's say you increase your horsepower by a significant amount. Well, we know you got to increase your cooling level too. Maybe you need to improve your brakes as well. So it's using more, you know, it's compounding the idea of talking with your friends by tens of thousands of people who've modified a WRX or a Hellcat or something like that. And for these engine swaps, all the components you need to do. A lot of people know this stuff individually, but they're using artificial intelligence to put it all in one place. And they're including a social aspect to it as well. So it's pretty exciting to see some of these technologies used for good.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. I think, you know, if you could balance using AI, you know, as a good way to kind of scour the collective thought there with a mix of going out and doing it yourself and racing, I think it might give you a better way to get started quicker. You know, I know I had in my past history there working at Hypertech, you know, the tuning by committee kind of thing that you see online. There were many times you look at things and go, yeah, you guys have never tried that on a strip because it doesn't work, you know. So, you know, kind of balancing those two. I mean, and Andy, I know you've seen the same thing, you know, some of the stuff that you and I have even talked about, you know. So,
Yeah. Striking a balance is definitely important too. Absolutely.
right. You know, putting actual, you know, effort and notes, you know, to your point earlier, Gavin, as being diligent with your notes of what you tried and what works. And, you know, if you're going to go do it, then you probably need to spend some time at a racetrack, whether it's at the drag strip or, you know, the autocross or even off-road. You know, it all pays off once you see it start working for real. So, you know,
Right.
that's a pretty good one. Pat, what about you? You know, from your side of the engine stuff, what are you seeing as emerging trends that, you know, you're excited to talk about?
We got kind of our own little box. Our main deal is the Pro Mod. We make 998 inches. We have 150 of those engines around the country that we maintain. So it's kind of a strange deal. But then we offshoot the 555. We stay in our lane. I don't know. I really don't want to get any bigger. I develop stuff for Edelbrock, but I see a lot of cool stuff coming down the road, you know. I mean, and they want to get into the race head deal, the street, you know, they're known for their castings are probably bar none. We've welded on everything. I go by welding on castings and I can tell you if it's good or not. But you know, so I'm not really a late model guy. I'm old school, you know, but still all the things go back to what you said. You learn on a racetrack, you bring it to the shop, you work on it. But bottom line, and this is a good clue for anybody listening, the end of the day, whether it's a time slip or a timer, that's the final deal. I mean, you can have, I've seen stuff on a dyno, oh, it's great. Well, don't run in the car. You know, I mean,
Right.
yeah, dynos have come a long way, so you can kind of see things better than you did. But bottom line, end of the day, it's got to be track proven or race proven or circle track proven or whatever, whether it's a time or time slip. That's what I live and go by, you know.
Right. Yeah. Gavin, what about you, man? What are you seeing? You know, you're the data guy. What are you seeing pop up on the radar?
Yeah, I'd say there's a couple of kind of big trends to watch that people really need to be thinking about. Really, and this is a lot around the OEMs. So for the performance side, for those racing classes where you're directly bringing in street cars, there's a lot of changes in what vehicles are being offered, right? In terms of the type of vehicles, a lot less traditional cars, sedan, coupe bodied cars, a lot more of the crossover, small SUV types. So I think that affects things both on the performance and potentially the racing side. The other thing, obviously, is the whole computerization of the cars coming out of the factories, right? Where everything is computer controlled. Now we have all these ADAS, additional safety systems coming onto the cars. And so how that interplays with our performance world, and of course, with translating these cars onto the track. And I think those are two big ones that people need to be constantly mindful of as we're going forward.
Right, that there might be some opportunities for industry improvements there, you know, for, you know, especially for these new cars that have these technology cars, trucks, you know, to get racing. How do you, you know, how do you see some gaps there that you could fill to keep these cars racing in the future, you know? Or, you know, how do you, like Andy was saying, is how do you take technology that we're seeing? I know for Speed Tech, you know, some of our sponsored drivers, they're even stepping in and adding traction control, you know, DSG transmissions to these, you know, second gen F bodies to go out there and race. And, you know, that you see a car that's, you know, built in the 70s with, you know, brand new suspension, you know, definitely the best one in the industry. You know, new suspension stuff on these cars, and then they add, you know, a direct shift transmission, and then, you know, I'm adding traction control that they can go out and keep up with something like, you know, a Skyline in autocross, you know, braking, acceleration, all that. Like, that's really saying something when you can kind of take the new technology and put it into an older vehicle. You know, that's amazing, you know, and that's, you know, that makes stories, Carl. You know, that's the stuff you want to talk about, is the cutting edge that comes from the aftermarket as we see what works in the OEMs and kind of adapt it and make our own versions to work on the racetrack, you know, and prove itself. Like, that's exciting stuff. You know, those innovations are incredible, you know, especially when you're talking about cars, you know, like I'm familiar with is cars that are really old, but we're putting the newest, you know, newest power plants in them, the newest, you know, traction control and, you know, ABS to them. So it's really, really cool stuff. Um, you know, talking about this, something we haven't dug into is talking about how we work with, you know, sanctioning bodies, because, you know, Pat, you know, is you can have the baddest car on the land, but if it's illegal, it doesn't do you much good, you know? So, you know, maybe let's talk about, like, you know, Pat, you've probably done this more than anybody here, I'm guessing, is like, if you're approaching a sanctioning body, how do you do that when you have a new product concept? You know, what's the best strategy for making sure that your product that you want to go, you know, build is something new, but it also aligns and is compliant before you start, you know?
It's funny you asked that. There's one more thing to add to that. You
Oh, okay.
really need to pull the racers in that class. You don't want to come up with something that isn't available to all of them.
Right.
It's not, you don't have parity, you don't have, it's
Yeah.
not fair, let's say, for lack of better words.
Right. Yeah.
We go through that, you know, so, and they skip that. You need to poll the drivers. Look, they're not all going to agree. I can tell you that. I've dealt with it my whole life, you know, but at least get a poll, see where you're at, then go to the sanctioning body. So I think there's a step in, at least in drag racing, you need to make. And then again, it's up to the sanctioning body when you come up with something. But
Right.
you know, it's important to get with the other drivers, the other teams, that you don't alienate. You know, say you get, we just had something come up in PDRA Pro Nitrous where they wanted to do something would help 1 or 2 cars, so we would save 1 or 2 cars, chase away 14 to 16 cars. So they decided to hold off, and sometimes you may have to hold off a year, give everybody a breather, and come up with it at the last minute. So all those things are factors.
Yeah, I gotcha. Timing. Yeah.
Timing. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I've found myself like, it's kind of one of those like, when you're talking about innovation, I'm sure all of you have experienced this as well, is when you kind of take your ideas and throw them at the wall. Sometimes, you're looking for that idea that really sticks, like that's the one to go after, but you may need to throw, 2 or 5 or 10 ideas at the wall. And
No.
sometimes, the reason they don't stick, it's not because it's a bad idea, it's just not the right time for that idea. That holds true whether it's parts or, basically business, business in general. That's what I found is that, don't think it's a bad idea. You may need to come back to it after some time, or maybe like you're saying, Pat, is like, hey, maybe you just don't have enough information. You need to talk to some more people and see, is this something that, that all the teams involved or, all your potential customers, is this something that they want? So maybe they don't want that right now because Andy, I don't want an electric motor added onto my, hot rod. But maybe in 5 years when that Tesla drivetrain is a little bit cheaper, you've got one and you've gone out there and broken all the records with it. Well, maybe I want to talk to you then, so you just
Yeah.
never know. I mean, I can assure you that on the electric, I think the electric drivetrain, the one thing that it's proven is that nobody wants something new forced down their throat. Nobody likes that.
Right.
Give me the option, I might talk to you. Show me something cool. That's pretty fun stuff, So anyway, Carl, there was something. Oh, go ahead, man.
Well, I was going to say that in my category, there's an existing population of race cars, and any innovation, even for safety, if it's something that's going to either obsolete cars or add cost, it's a challenge. And talking to those sanctioning bodies, MPMC would be a great place if we could gather some of these guys, because sometimes they just don't know, and it's hard to distill when one team is looking for an advantage. Maybe they've got a financial one and they want to compound that by introducing a part, or maybe some other reason. But there are times when embracing the aftermarket does lower costs and increase durability and is good for the series. It's important to have quality, level-headed communication with these sanctioning bodies, and one that doesn't promote it's not about selling a contingency sponsorship. It's not about any of that stuff. Just, is it good for the racer and racing? And we have to answer those two questions separately. And if both answers are yes, we have to figure out how to get the sanctioning bodies to welcome the aftermarket parts. Because in my category, there's an inherent resistance to do that. And I've been campaigning for the aftermarket for all my 35 years of in this role.
Yeah, man, I know you were telling me. Say again, Pat?
Very well said.
Yeah, that's perfect.
I mean,
yep. Carl, you said something the other day I thought was pretty interesting, talking about you had a race car that had like an aftermarket engine in it that may have lasted a couple days.
A couple days, yeah. So
Yeah.
as everybody talks and knows here, that the key to doing your job well, whatever it is in this sport, is to be hands-on, boots on the ground, and do it. So throughout my entire career in motorsports media, I've built and maintained the project cars for our magazine. And I hope Pat would consider me a good customer, because we built a project engine. It's a dry sump, aluminum headed race motor, running about 7,800 RPM in 100 lap races. And I got 10 years and 10,000 laps out of that engine, just changing the oil by myself and valve springs by myself every 2,000 laps. And I was able to do that because I followed the manufacturer's instructions. It was a well-built motor to start with, and I didn't abuse it. And so my point in this earlier, Pat, was that the components and the engine builders of today are so good and so talented that any failure is either an exclusive case or owner abuse. The parts are so good today, and they're cheaper than ever. People don't do this. I took 2 catalogs and I looked up the engine parts from 25 years ago and 5 years ago. And the price of these components is way down. You know, maybe at the high ends it's more expensive, but there are higher quality, less expensive parts available to everyone today. Today is the best time ever to go racing.
Well,
Yeah,
when I started, we went to the junkyard, got our parts.
Yeah,
We worked on them.
don't have to
But
do that anymore.
another thing to add to your deal, and you're dead on, is maintenance. I give guys the best stuff, but when the engine comes in, I can tell them what they're not maintaining. Oh yeah, well, I can't get a filler gauge on it because my header's in the way. You know, so you just answered your own question, you know, but you can give the best product, and if they don't maintain it, you're done.
Yeah, yeah.
So
When I
we
was in the
stress
military,
that.
when I was in the army, they said they idiot proof something. I was in the, another soldier said, we'll just come out with a better idiot.
Hard to idiot proof, but we try.
right. Yeah, how many times have instructions been rewritten just to, fix one more problem that you didn't see coming from somebody that just didn't want to read it anyway?
Yeah.
Shampoo labels have instructions.
Right. Gavin, I want to kick over to you just for a second. What are some essential insights that you see that, marketers and engineers can gain from you specifically, from SEMA and PRI market research reports? I know you've scour across so much data. What are you seeing that's some important essential data that we could look for of, hey, we're all SEMA PRI members. What can we get from you guys?
Yeah, yeah. And I think, in addition to what I talked about earlier, the early stuff, a lot of what you can get from looking at market research, whether it's my stuff or stuff that comes from magazines, etc., is really the key is to understand what your opportunity is, right? So that may be how many of these vehicles that my part could go on are out there in the world, right? Are there likely to be more coming online? And that can be in the performance side, are they building the new products? How many of them are on the road? On the racing side, it's, what class do my products fit in? How many cars are racing in that? Are they going to bring in a new class that my product's going to fit? So those are really some of the big keys that looking at data, whether it's from me or from other places, is trying to understand that opportunity space. The last thing you want to do is go, oh, I have this great idea, start building it and find out that there's only 5 cars in the world that it fits on, right?
Right.
So that to me is really, really a key when people are coming out and looking for research information data.
So how often do you issue that the industry report?
So in June, we will put out our next SEMA market report. And that from the performance side is the size and scope of the industry. And we put that out yearly. We also basically yearly put out a couple of other reports, our future trends report and our state of the industry reports that give some different takes on some trends, as well as we do a big survey of the industry to find out where their heads are, what they see as, growing, not growing, where they see opportunities. So pretty much every year we're coming out with a whole set of new reports that give updated information.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. I know I've read through some of, I have not read the entire report. It's pretty extensive, so forgive me. But I know from reading those, it's one of those things that's like, the information is key, and having that is so valuable. And when you get it and you start digging into your reports, Gavin, I mean, they're just, there's so much information there that it really helps you I know it helped us kind of identify like what's the hot topic, what is SEMA seeing? Well, that's our industry, so that's really cool stuff, so, whether you're, like you said, there's one point of data collection there, Carl, from the magazines, like you're serving stories to the general public that they want to read. So there's another good, source of information. So, there's a lot of information collected if you know where to look for it and you're kind of paying attention and being intentional about what you're seeing is like, hey, you know, just because Pat Musey has an awesome big block for my 66 Buick, I'll give you my address later. It doesn't mean you've got the only one and that nobody else should make a big block, like you said, Andy, is like, hey, you're relaying like, hey, this is what we're going to make, maybe
Right.
somebody wants a supercharged big block that, doesn't idle worth the crap, but it sounds awesome and really makes your neighbors happy when you fire it up on Saturday morning. So, that's something that I know from my experience is that the industry and our customer base is so big that, there's room for competition. That's what makes everything, that's what makes the world go round is the competition. Is like, I worked with my team and came up with a solution. You worked with your team and had a solution. That's, anybody that goes racing, when you get out there and you start competing, and especially when you have a problem, the camaraderie in this industry is unbelievable. When you can touch somebody else that is a direct competitor and they're like, what do you need? I'll help you, because we'd all rather grow together and, do it together. If you beat me fair, that's great. But if I beat you because, your headers are in the way and you can't check your valves, maybe I'll beat you anyway, but at least can give you some insight to, better luck next time. Maybe you should work on that. So, but that's the great thing about this industry, is so much of the industry is looking at the customer base, and our scope and view is really, it's hard to get enough business that you're dominant in the world of aftermarket motorsports. There's always room for competition and innovation. So, from a standpoint of knowing the data and knowing your articles, you can see opportunity there. It may not be you're the first person in there, but you may have an innovative design. Like you said, Andy, is like, hey, we have a reason that we want to make a new part here. Yes, there
Right.
may be other air intakes here, but ours is different because it benefits, goes with another product you have, or has an innovative idea that's not being implemented somewhere else, or, something like that, so don't be afraid to be joining, this aftermarket and being part of the group. It's a really big group and it's a really great bunch of people, man. I've enjoyed meeting so many of you, whether it's on webinars like this, or, out in person at the races, or, just running into you at SEMA, or PRI show. It's an awesome industry to be a part of. And it's that passion and innovation that really pushes us to the top. It's really fun. The passion is what pushes me. So, do you guys have anything else? We've got about, 5 or 6 minutes left. Do you guys have anything that you want to specifically throw out there before we, call it a day?
Well, okay, I'll start. I just want to say, being part of SEMA and PRI staff, I just want people to know that we are here for them. Our mission is to support all of you guys. So feel free to reach out. You can reach out to me personally. I am here to help you. If you're looking for information, you're looking for data on something, I may have it. I may not have it, but I may know where to point you in the direction of it. And I love having those conversations, because ultimately at the end of the day, if I don't know what people are looking for, what information will help all of you, then it's harder for me to come up with that on my own. So
Yeah, good point. Yeah, communication.
I
And
can
yeah,
Go ahead, you go first, Carl.
Well, okay, and this is a little bit challenging, but I get lots of press releases from people who celebrate street racing, and that bothers me to my core. I had the privilege of photographing Wally Parks, and he built this industry because he promised to take high performance driving off the street. And our newspapers and our websites and news are filled with tragic stories of people who are abusing cars on roads and hurting innocent people. And I strongly campaign that this industry arm itself against that and distance itself from people who are driving irresponsibly on the road and encourage them like Wally did. Carry his message forward into 2025 that they should be at a racetrack, a drag strip, a closed course, somewhere, an oval track, and really test yourself against people who want to be racing you back and not putting society at risk and the reputation of our industry. That's my final thought for today.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
can add to that. And I was so against the street racing with my late daughter, Lizzie, you know, actually going, and they were for it. Let's go out on the highway. Now, look, it was a closed deal. Highway shut off, safety was there, but it still wasn't a racetrack. And that was most of the arguments we had, you know, but we finally, they realized that the no prep kings on the racetrack were great. So even though I started out street racing, I didn't know any better. I was 17, 16 years old street racing. But I am against it 150%. Just like Carl, I think we need, that's an important deal. We need to stress. They think it's cool. You got this JJ the boss wacko out there pushing it. And I'm not. I can tell you right now, I'm not for it. But Lizzie did well in the No Prep Kings. And I was glad I had that time winner. But know that I'm a big proponent of a street race. Do not want to see it.
right. Yeah, it's I get the excitement of it, but it's just a little bit, to your point, Carl, is put some times to it, man. You want to compete, go compete. You would be surprised, if anybody is into street racing and not into competing at the racetrack. I mean, the camaraderie that comes out of it, and the people you're going to meet on the racetrack are going to change your life. That's an opportunity you shouldn't shy away from. It's there are a lot of basically sanctions there that there's rules of how to set your car up for a reason, to make them safer. That's to protect you, and it's never applies to you until it's too late. So take that opportunity and don't do that. Don't be too late. Take the opportunity to listen to people that these racing sanctioning bodies have been around for a long time and have rules that are based on experiences that can help, not only help you be faster and safer, but it also helps to have a group that you're a part of, somebody that you can go out and hang out with on the weekends and do something where you're supposed to do it that's dedicated. Now you don't have to worry about outside interference, ruining your day. So I agree. Been there, done that, but once you start putting your foot in the right pool, it's unbelievably turns out unbelievable very quickly. So
Yeah.
awesome thought there, Carl.
Yeah.
Andy, you got anything?
I do. Final thoughts. If you think you have something that you want to bring to market to try to push the industry forward, whether it's niche, right? Maybe not 5 cars on the whole planet, right? Like Kevin said, but if it's there and you think that it should be out there, put the energy behind it and make it happen, right? The SEMA, PRI, MPMC, right? This entire community is built off of people doing just that, and I think that that's something that really we need to remember is it all starts with an idea, right? And then you try it and it works, and you do it again and it works again, and you just rinse and repeat. And that really keeps the excitement going. New stuff keeps it flowing. It brings new customers, new interest, new people into this space. And I think that that's really, really something that's important. So
Right.
keep the ideas coming, keep making stuff better.
Right. Yeah, that's great points, man. Well, I think that wraps up our conversation today. I do want to touch real quick on the Media Trade Conference. Give a few details on that before we cut out of here. The dates for that are going to be January 27th through the 29th, 2026. Let's see, you're going to check in early. There you go. There's the information there. Welcome reception on the 26th, and we'll check out on the 30th. This is going to be in Anaheim again. So we were in Orlando in 2025, and 2026 will be in Anaheim again. So kind of back and forth there. That should invite some more interesting people from the West Coast that may not have come for the East Coast version, but it's going to be a lot of fun. If you'd like to register for Media Trade Conference, you can hit us on mediatradeconference.com or even SEMA.org/MPMC. If you register up until October 1st, it's $950. And you'll get a room with that. And you have to be an MPMC, TORA, or a PRI member by January of 2026 to be able to come. So obviously, if you need more information, I'll have contact information in this slide deck, and you can look again on the MPMC website. If you need anything, please reach out. There's a list of our contact information. These are all the members, the volunteer members of the select committee, and also Bill Bader from Summit Motorsports Park. He's our liaison to the SEMA board. It's a great group of people. If you need any information, please reach out. There's also Marcy, that's our board director, or our council director. So, and her email is marcy@sema.org there. Thank you for coming today. If you want to become a member, if you're not already, of the MPMC, please see our website. And, this is all put together to be a part of, the community. We want you guys to be vocal in what you would like to have us talk about, and, getting panels like this together. I hope you enjoyed it today. I had a great time talking to everybody here. So thank you for your input. There were a lot of chat going on. So thank you very much. I hope you guys have a great weekend. And thank you so much for coming on, Pat, Carl, Gavin, and Andy. Thank you so much for being a part of this today. It was great talking with you guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thanks. Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Gavin. Big fan, Pat. Thank you.
Thanks. You guys need me, you know where to find me. I think you can find me.
I appreciate that, man. Y'all have a great day. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.